I'm going to do a little watercolor painting today of some vegetables that I grew in my vegetable garden across the street in the community garden. And these are mostly eggplants, but there's also some arugula in there. Little peppers are buried on the bottom, but what you're going to mostly see in this bowl are the eggplants on top with the arugula. And there's one yellow eggplant in there, which kind of gives it a nice, I don't know, variation in color so that we see something besides just purple and green. Anyway, I'm going to use my Schmincke paints today, and I have some actual cake pans today that are one full pan each, not just a little half pan, so it's nice to be able to have a larger amount to dip into. All beautiful colors, brand new set, love it. Never had these before. I always use the tube paints, so I'm trying out these today, see how they do. And I am working from a photo that I took rather than a still life set up, because where I put these eggplants in this bowl, I just couldn't leave them there. The light was never going to stay right for them, so I snapped some photos, and I'll work from one of those photos, which I will show you the reference photo as I'm painting. Okay, I made this color swatch set here so it would let me know what some of these colors are down here. Now, normally I don't do that because it's pretty clear to me what color is what or which color is which. I know the light is reflecting off of these, but why I'm holding it here is I want to show you, like, this here looks so dark. But if you see that scratch on the top, it's blue. It is a very light blue. It is, in fact, this blue right here. You would never know that if you didn't make a swatch of it or experiment with it. So it's helpful to make the swatches so you know what you're working with before you start putting it down on paper. So anyway, my reference photo is here, and my sketch that I've done in pencil so I can erase and fix anything that didn't come right. The green will be back here and up forward. Purple eggplant, another purple eggplant, another purple eggplant back here and here, and then the yellow one will be right there. Paper is toned paper on a Stillman and Burns little 5x8. I happen to like this because it's got the binding here, so I can open the book up all the way without bending the pages. Because I have other books that I really love that are lightweight. They don't have this heavy outside panel on it that holds the book together stiffly, so it's much lighter. But it's also awkward when you're trying to open it up and paint on the full page, or bend it in half and paint on a half page. You're kind of messing up your painting you did previously. Because this is toned, I will have to use gouache when I want to come to the full light or white color. So I already have a medium tone on the paper to start with, so I need to get lighter than this in some instances for the highlights. So you'll see me use a little bit of white gouache. I'm constantly painting little things. I just love tiny, the smallest they can possibly be. For some reason, to me, is very magical paintings. And here's my little book. This is a painting I did in Gulfport, down by the marina or whatever, by the dock there. Pretty little boat in the water, early morning. This is across the street at the park. These are just little tiny paintings. This is a painting of something that I saw down there by the Gulfport area, walking up and down the streets. They had these little umbrellas. This is part of my garden across the street. Someone has nothing but sunflowers in their garden, so I took a photo of that. This is my daughter eating lunch with me in Gulfport on the day that we were walking around looking at all the stores. This is just a small flower painting. Here's one that copied from an idea from someone on the internet, just to see, or I think he had a YouTube video of this. See what it would be like to do it in a tiny painting. So that's not an original idea. Yesterday I was practicing and I copied someone else's painting just to see if I could do it on this paper of a barn scene. He did a beautiful job in oil, and I just copied it with the watercolor to see how it would work on this paper. So I start by just laying down a little bit of color very lightly, just to get the concept down. And I'll put layer after layer until I get this as dark as I think it needs to be. This paper is not really specifically good for watercolor. I think it's much better for gouache, which is why I am not wetting the paper ahead of time. Because it buckles pretty badly when you do that. I will go over all of this again. Careful not to paint the pages underneath. I guess I'm going to have to get my paper clips out in a minute because I know this is going to buckle a bit. So it's like yellow ochre and then Naples yellow down on the bottom here. And that's like a midnight blue up on top. I'm doing it backwards because my palette is upside down just so that the part that sits up a little higher does not get in the way of the camera. So you can go over the paint pretty nicely without worrying too much about bleeding. And those funny little cauliflowers, as long as you don't make it too wet. So I'm going to add a little purple now. Into what's already here. I'm using the big brush, so I don't have little details going on. I don't want details. I know this is not gouache. I know this is not oil. So you really do want to paint the lighter stuff first. But I am an oil painter and it's very hard for me to do that. Very, very hard. So I laid down the lightest green. Now I'm putting in some of the darker greens, the little nooks and crannies in the leaves. And then I go in, put the medium greens in. And then I go back and forth again with the lightest of the greens. Back to the dark greens, and just keep on playing with it until I get it where I think it looks like a pile of arugula. And also try my best to give it some dimension. I don't like to talk too much during the video because I really prefer you just watch and relax and not have to hear my monotonous voice telling you, now I'm painting the bowl, now I'm painting the eggplant, because apparently you can see that, right? Now I'm painting blue, now I'm painting purple. I'm just being silly. What I am doing right there is removing a little bit of paint with my little eraser brush because I got a little bit of the purple where I didn't want it. You can layer over dry paint over and over and over again and get it as dark as you think you need it. I have a skylight in my house, so some of the reflections and highlights that you will see on this eggplant are actually blue, coming from the light from the sky. I hear my timer going off. My collard greens are done. I grew those in my garden too. Let me get you in a little closer so you can see a little bit better. So now you'll just see me going over this several more times, darkening the darker spots, lightening the lighter spots, but it's pretty much in the way I want it. I just have to intensify the color. Some of the eggplants are a little bit brownish, and some of them are a little bit more blue or purple. And you see they have these funny striations on them, and right at the tip it's kind of greenish. And you have your funny little dried out top. So these are some of the live ones that I took out of the bowl that I'm still looking at for reference, as well as my photo that I'm using over here. So unlike acrylic or or oil, if I wanted to get in here and get these light spots to show the reflection and the highlights, it's much easier to do with those paints as opposed to watercolor. You may end up having to remove paint or use something really opaque like gouache to try to get this lighter reflection here underneath here, and then the highlight up here, which needs to be a little bit lighter than it is. But we're about 3/4 of the way through this. We have to get this correct here with a light on it. We have to get this color in here right. Then we have to put the band in here and the shadow underneath there, and then touch up anything that's not quite right, and it will be done. I might have to change some colors, even though this is really green. It's not showing up because it's next to this green, so we might have to make that a little lighter color. There's where you have to use artistic license. But we're coming along. We've got it moving along nicely. There's a picture of my little garden that I have over in the community garden spot across the street in the park. That's where these eggplants came from. If I were painting on white paper, I could use masking fluid to mask out the areas that I want light, but since it's a toned paper, I have to kind of use the gouache to lighten those areas to put the really nice highlight down. Sorry for this really bright light. I was painting at night and the light was really reflecting too much. I think you can still see it, it's just not perfect. Now I'm using some watercolor pencils here because they're a little bit more exact, and then I'll go over it with a little bit of water on the tip of my brush. I know the bowl looks a little crooked from this angle. I'm sorry I had to put the camera at this angle, but with the light, it just wasn't possible to do it any other way. But I'll show you a final picture and you'll see that it's reasonably straight. You see how when I put the water on this watercolor pencil, it darkens the blue. Okay, folks, we're going to call that one done. No, it's not perfect. Nothing's ever perfect, but it's good enough. I like it. I think I got my point across. Take a snapshot of it and call it done. Practice paintings are just that, practice. It's not something I'm going to sell or put in a competition, so my level of expertise on this is a little bit lower. But I enjoy it, I learn a lot from it, and I put all that education into the next one.